welcome back. We're going to continue with Rome. I want to talk for a few minutes about the Punic Wars. This is a long series of wars in the 2nd and 3rd century before the Common Era between Rome and Carthage, its great rival there in the Mediterranean. Carthage, of course, is a much older empire than Rome. I believe founded by the Phoenicians, a seagoing people. The Phoenicians, of course, are from what we think of as Palestine. And they established cities around the Mediterranean coast. And Carthage was founded by the Phoenicians, I think, in about 814 before the Common Era. So you see, this is quite old. Carthage is a maritime empire based in what today we think of as Tunisia in North Africa. And Carthage dominated trade in the Western Mediterranean. Rome and Carthage will come into conflict. As Rome expands south down the Italian peninsula, Roman interest in Sicily conflict with Carthaginian interest in Sicily. And it's over control of Sicily that these wars will begin. The Carthaginians, of course, as a maritime people, have an extensive navy, powerful navy, and the Romans, in order to fight with Carthage, will have to build their own fleet. The First Punic War, 264 to 41 before the Common Era, the Romans gained control of Sicily, and they won naval battles against the Carthaginians in the Roman way. The Romans constructed ships that would allow them to pull up astride Carthaginian ships, and then elaborate gangplanks were constructed to allow Roman soldiers to board Carthaginian ships and slaughter the Carthaginian crews. Rome was not successful, however, in invading Carthage itself. The Second Punic Wars are the ones that most people are more familiar with because of the fame of Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who led the campaigns against Rome. Second Punic War, 218 before the Common Era. Hannibal carried out one of the more spectacular military campaigns in history. He led the Carthaginians from North Africa into Spain, and then eastward across the Alps, down into the Italian peninsula. And he waged war for 16 years in Roman territory, inflicting some serious defeats on the Romans. The Battle of Cannae, of course, is one of the most famous set-piece battles in history, still studied in military institutions today. In spite of this, Hannibal was never able to capture Rome itself. He did not have sophisticated siege equipment with him to break the city down. And although a lot of southern Italy rallied to Hannibal's side, he was unable to break the Roman hold on the Italian peninsula. In 203, before the Common Era, Hannibal was forced to return to Carthage as Rome had fashioned a counterattack against the capital city. The Second Punic Wars come to an end in 202 before the Common Era, when Hannibal was defeated at the Battle of Zama by the Roman general Scipio Africanus. And in the Third Punic War, 146 before the Common Era, the Romans do occupy Carthage and destroy it, literally put an end to the Carthaginian civilization. As we move through these Punic Wars and as Rome continues to take on more and more responsibilities as it expands, you'll see that soldiering is going to become a profession. It's no longer simply a matter of the citizen soldier, where the citizen fights and then goes back to his craft or to his farm. Increasingly, you're going to see the Roman legions comprised of professional soldiers, where soldiering is a career and not something that's taken up just in emergency situations. The victory over Hannibal and over Carthage reveals Rome as the dominant regional power in the Mediterranean. Of course, this is not the end of the fighting for the Romans. They will continue in Spain and Gaul, in the east, in Greece, in Asia Minor, and so on and so forth. But the victory over Carthage does establish Rome as a sort of, I don't know if I'd call it a world power, perhaps you could, certainly a regional power at the very least. Now, I want to take a few moments here in the rest of this lecture, and I want to talk about Rome and religion. We're going to talk about the emergence of Christianity in the context of the Roman Empire, and we'll spend a few lectures talking about early Christianity, including the Council of Nicaea and other important things. But here I want to talk or speak more generally about Rome and religion for a few minutes. Rome, of course, is a polytheistic society, one that worships many gods. The Romans aren't particular about which gods you worship. That's your business. But they do expect all citizens to pay homage to the Roman gods, to carry out certain civic duties, civic obligations to the Roman pantheon and to the emperor. And if you refuse to do that, then you can get in trouble with the Romans. And of course, we'll see this with the Christians, who will seclude themselves from Roman civic life and practice a religion in secret and refuse to abide by the sort of civic duties that Romans expect. Think of yourself at a baseball game, and it's time for the national anthem. And you rise and put your right hand over your heart, and you take off your cap, and you turn towards the flag, and the anthem is played. And everyone in the stadium does this except for the three guys in front of you who do not take off their caps. They continue to drink their beer. They do not rise from their seats. You can see how something like that could cause a fight today in a stadium. This is sort of what the Christians do. They don't participate, they don't show respect for Roman civic culture, and this is why they get in trouble. So let's continue here with Rome and religion. Increasingly, the Romans are going to incorporate so-called mystery cults from the East. You're thinking here of Isis and Mithras, Cybele, and then in time, Christ, who also is a sort of a mystery cult originating within Judaism and then turning into something else. And again, these are all Eastern religions. At their heart, of course, the Romans worship the pantheon of mythological figures. We think of Jupiter and Juno and others. Traditional polytheism. The Romans, like I said, are very tolerant of other people's religious faiths. You're probably familiar with the Latin slogan on our money, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. In Rome, out of many religions, one Roman people. Again, polytheistic people tend to be much more tolerant of other people's religious faith than do monotheistic. There are countless examples of Christian martyrs in the centuries leading up to Constantine. Perpetua, a very famous example of a young woman who goes to her death instead of recanting her Christian faith. The legend has it that her father begged her to recant so she could live. She refused. The lions in the arena would not touch her, according to legend. The Roman soldiers ordered to cut her throat would not do it. She finally takes the sword and cuts her own throat. Again, these legends of Christian martyrs, of course, tend to strengthen the faith and to build the church. So you can think of Rome as having a sort of a la carte religious menu from which you can pick and choose. And of course, many elite Romans and otherwise would choose Christian saints as one of the deities that they showed respect to. One of the great questions in dealing with Roman history and religion is the issue of diversity. We'll talk about Constantine and the idea of one God, one emperor, one empire. And we'll see that as we reach the 4th century of the Common Era, that Constantine is seeking a uniformity of religion. In the earlier centuries of Rome, of course, we have just a great variety of religions. Historians have talked now and written about this for many years now, the role of Christianity in the Roman Empire. If you read Gibbon, you'll see he's quite critical of the role of Christianity and its the part it plays, and perhaps the fall of Rome. The Romans, their relationship with these Eastern religions, especially Judaism and Christianity, it's interesting. The Romans tolerated the Jews because of the great antiquity of the Jews. Their faith goes back deep into history. So because of this, these long-standing traditions, the Romans could tolerate that. But this new faith that's born of Judaism, this new faith of Christianity, does not have the virtue of being ancient. It's quite new. And it's a dissenting faith, and one in which its followers, again, do not show the proper respect for Roman civic institutions. Other things about emerging Christianity that's a bit of a problem, it has a sort of otherworldliness to it, an afterlife. Many Christians, of course, practice celibacy to separate themselves from the material world. They refuse to take oaths. They refuse to make the regular sacrifices to the Roman gods and to the emperor. And of course, Christians are sometimes scapegoated. Many people familiar with the Emperor Nero in 64 of the Common Era when Rome burned. And of course, the Christians were scapegoated for this, and many of them slaughtered by the emperor. Christian values are distinctly un-Roman. The notion of blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the world. This is not a slogan the average Roman would have adhered to. And again, Christians tend to keep to themselves. Is Christianity a threat to the Roman social hierarchy, where everybody has his place? It's perceived that way. Women are especially attracted to this new Christian cult. Christians meet underground in the catacombs and in private. Rumors abound about these Christians and their practices. Men and women mixing together, or their orgies taking place. Is there incest? There's legends that the Christians kill children, drink their blood. Roman gossip pass these type of things from place to place, and gives Christians a very bad reputation. And of course, they will not sacrifice to the Roman gods, which is an insult. The cult of the emperor, and this is why this is important, the cult of the emperor is a unifying factor in Rome. And here you have a set of people who are dissenting and not participating in that cult. It's probably worth mentioning, and we'll talk about this again, but it's worth mentioning that Christian martyrs do strengthen the church. I remember one of the church fathers said something to the effect that the blood of the martyrs is the seeds of the church. And again, the persecution of Christians takes place in public, quite often in the arena, in the amphitheater, so the masses can see Christian martyrs. And of course, when you see someone sacrifice their life for their faith, it may get your attention and may make you question your own faith or lack of it. So quite often, Christian martyrs become champions of the people for their courage. Christianity also attracted people both from the elite classes and the lower classes. Again, the elite would often adopt Christian saint as one of the deities in his pantheon of gods that he worships. There is this notion of salvation in an afterlife. The notion of charity, again, is appealing to many people. And the Christian church is slowly becoming institutionalized in the early centuries, in the Common Era. Little pockets of Christian followers scattered around the Mediterranean, from the Italian peninsula to Greece to Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt, and North Africa. So it's kind of ironic when you think about it. These fabulous Roman roads that connect the empire together will bring Christian proselytizers and missionaries and martyrs to the very center of the empire and present a very distinct Christian challenge to the empire. And again, when we get to Constantine, we'll talk about this in more detail, but he will actually adopt Christianity as the faith of the Roman Empire in the 4th century. I'm going to end with just a brief mention of another Roman emperor who in the 4th century tried unsuccessfully to end the Christian influence in Rome. This is the Emperor Julian. He's often called Julian the Apostate. And he tries to strike down the institutional power of the Christian church and to raise the pagan practices again. Julian's killed in the east in a campaign against Persia. And with him, with his death, ended the attempt to squash Christianity for the last time. So I'm going to stop there. Again, we're going to talk about Rome more. We need to talk about the civil wars and the transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire. But we'll take that up again later. Thank you.